Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I was asked in the comment section about the current situation in Germany. We have heavy rainfalls and floods also. So I want to report a little bit about that. There is stuff that is big news, but not unusual. And there is stuff that I have heard for the first time ever in Germany. That is, well, newsworthy and actually novel. Okay, let me break this down. So, in 2002, for example, there was a big flood in the east at the Oder River, and I think it wasn't just Germany that it was affected, it was also the Czech Republic and Poland and stuff. So it was a Central European flood back then. But this year, 2021, it is very, very bad in Germany's west, actually. Not in the east, in the west. North Rhine-Westphalia, the area around Cologne, for example, they are affected pretty much by that. Very, very bad. There are casualties. There is a lot of damage. Houses, cars, entire towns are destroyed. Basements are flooded. Houses collapsed. It's really bad. And this is due to heavy rainfall. And then the rivers are swelling. And maybe you know that. It's like these undulating rivers. There are these curves. There is a steep side, and then there is a rather shallow or not so steep side in the bend of the river. Anyways, and the rain, the torrents come down from valleys, and it can just flood these valleys and these settlements that are at the river banks. And of course, historically, that is a very interesting place to settle. You have your built-in sewer system, you have a trade and transport gateway that is the river system in Central Europe. So people settled there, of course. And it is normal that every now and then, every couple of years, there is a minor flood, and a couple of times a century, there is a major event where a lot of damage can be observed. And now, of course, it doesn't take a prophet to predict that or something like that. The Green Party lunatics now are tweeting that, oh yeah, this is climate change. Clearly, this is proof, direct evidence, proof, and this will happen more often in the future, blah, blah, blah. I think this is absolute nonsense. Me, myself, growing up in the 80s, I remember a lot of floods in many, many towns. And we have that every couple of years. It's not new. And in fact, the city of Cologne, I looked it up. They have city archives, very, very famous archives in Cologne. And you can read there that in the 12th century, there was heavy flooding. Then there were two devastating floods in the 14th century. And then in the 18th century, there was another one. And this list, by the way, is not complete. This is just some random picks here, yeah? So in the 12th century, was that global warming? No, it's just because it's at the Rhine River. This is normal, okay? By the way, there is another interesting political component here. In 2002, that is the flood in the east that I mentioned in the beginning, Gerhard Schröder, the chancellor back then, he saved the election because 2002 was also an election year. He had just been through his first term, his first 4 years of office as the German chancellor when he won against Helmut Kohl in 1998. And then there was this flood. So what he did is he put on his rubber boots and he went with the helicopter or what have you down there, and he promised people fat government checks. And that is what won him the election. Yeah. Interesting now in 2021 is that the governor of North Rhine-Westphalia, the state that is pretty much affected right now, is no other than Armin Laschet, the chancellor candidate of the CDU, Angela Merkel's CDU party. So if he plays his cards right and he finds a pair of rubber boots that fit him, then He can present himself as the problem solver. I don't know if he can promise them too much direct aid as the governor. Well, he's not the chancellor yet, but maybe he can spin something. Maybe he can organize something. Who knows? So that is a chance for Mr. Laschet to shine now as the savior of his people and dishing out the government money. And of course, people who lose their house, people who are affected, yes, they should get help, obviously. Um, but I have to say that this happens every couple of years, no? In a minor way and in a very, very bad way, a couple of times a century or once a century or something like that in Germany. And especially at these sites, it is very usual. And now I want to say one more time, or well, I want to mention actually, I'm not criticizing that this is in the news. Big disasters like that are, of course, newsworthy. It affects people, a lot of damage. In Japan, for example, when there is a typhoon or when there is an earthquake, of course, or a volcanic activity, what have you, there are so many natural disasters in Japan. That's always in the news because people want to know. They need to know sometimes. You have to be informed, and this is definitely newsworthy. No discussion about that, okay? It's just this global warming nonsense that has nothing to do with these events that they have been around since forever. Yeah. Okay. So, but what is newsworthy and actually new? Yeah. In Japan, there are earthquakes all the time. It's not unusual. It's not an anomaly. It's very normal, but it's still newsworthy. What is actually new now is that there was looting. Looting after or the attempts of looting in some places after a disaster where people were evacuated. They had to leave their stores, they had to leave their houses. And that is new for Germany. And that doesn't exist in Japan, for example. Japan has so many disasters and there is never any looting. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen here or there, maybe, but it's not common. It's not, and I think in Japan that would be in the news. I think it would be reported because it's absolutely unknown. I've talked to many people in Japan. They all said, no, this doesn't happen here. And also in Germany, I mean, I, I never heard about this. I live here for many decades already, and I never heard a case. There are many evacuations in Germany, of course, not as often as Japan. We don't have, well, actually, floods is pretty much the only thing we have in Germany in terms of natural disasters. There is no earthquakes in Germany that are at least very high magnitude, minor ones that you hardly notice. I never physically noticed an earthquake in Germany, by the way. There is no volcanic activity. Maybe in the Eifel there are some, but not active, I think. These are inactive volcanoes, maybe. But I never heard any cases of looting until today. Today was the first time I read in the newspaper there was looting in Germany after an evacuation. And of course, they even arrested a suspect, or, well, someone they caught actually. And they're not saying who it was. They're saying, oh, it's a man, it's someone. They're not saying who these people are. Interesting, huh? And also, I think we all know why this doesn't happen in Japan. It's a homogeneous society, high trust society, just like the societies that Germans build. But it is not just Germans anymore in Germany, is it? And of course, that is why this happens now. And we will see that more in the future. We will not see more disasters, but we will see more unpleasant side effects, um, especially in the aftermath, because you can't trust anybody anymore these days in Germany. And maybe if that had been the case in Eastern Germany, you also wouldn't have seen any looting. Maybe in Leipzig, with these leftists, maybe. But yeah, in North Rhine-Westphalia, how many Germans are there still? I don't know. Half? Well, I don't know. Among young people, maybe 40%. I don't know. So expect more of that. It's global homogenization. We are becoming more like all the other assholes in the world, right? uh, if you import the people, you get the circumstances you import them to, right? And that was the actual novelty in the news about Germany for me today. Of course, the bigger and way more important event is the flood, but that is not news. That is new. Well, I think you get the point. I said it many times now. It is definitely news, but it's not new. It's normal. And the new thing is the looting. You know? So, not fear and loathing, but flood and looting in Germany. That is the title that I wrote on the thumbnail. And this is what I thought when I heard the news from today. Let that sink in, process that. And yeah, that is just what you get when you turn from a homogeneous high trust society to a fractured multi-ethnic society with many parallel societies that sometimes ignore each other, sometimes work together, but in many instances also work against each other or openly hate each other. You know? That's what you get. Servus, Kameraden.